Hello and welcome back to The Art of Reflection. In a world where everything is for sale, our time, our attention, our bodies, what would Nietzsche say about the rise of platforms like OF? This isn't a question about morality in the traditional sense. Nietzsche was no moralist in the way society often understands the term. He didn't believe in rigid moral frameworks handed down by tradition or religion. He challenged them. But what he did believe in was depth. The pursuit of authenticity, of life-affirming values, of becoming more than what we are. So when we look at something like OF, a platform where people monetize their intimacy, often as a response to economic hardship or in search of validation, Nietzsche's philosophy opens an unsettling but necessary perspective. Let's begin there. The will to power or the will to please? Nietzsche believed that every living thing is driven by the will to power. Not merely the desire to survive or reproduce, but to grow, to assert, to create, to express one's essence boldly and freely. At first glance, you might say platforms like OF embody this drive. Creators controlling their image, monetizing their intimacy, breaking taboos, being empowered. But Nietzsche would caution us, is this really empowerment? Or is this the appearance of empowerment within a system that exploits our needs for approval? The will to power is not about pleasing others. It's not about validation from strangers or mass appeal. It's about transcending limitations, becoming more real, more true, more ourselves. And when desire is reduced to a transaction, a subscription fee for a fantasy, we risk draining it of its creative, life-affirming energy. What happens when self-expression becomes self-marketing? When the act of revealing becomes a performance crafted to fit algorithms, niches, and audience expectations? Nietzsche might argue the danger is not in the nudity, but in the erosion of interiority. Ressentiment and the cult of visibility. In On the Genealogy of Morality, Nietzsche speaks of ressentiment, a reactive emotion that arises when individuals feel powerless, leading them to redefine weakness as a virtue and strength as a vice. In today's society, where visibility often substitutes for value, we see something similar. If I can't become powerful in traditional ways, intellectually, economically, socially, I can still be seen, I can still be desirable, I can still sell an image even if the self behind it remains unseen, perhaps even forgotten. In this light, adult content creation becomes less about rebellion and more about survival, less about empowerment, more about adapting to a system that rewards performance over presence. Nietzsche would likely ask us, are we cultivating real strength or just reshaping weakness to be aesthetically pleasing? Are we engaging with our desires or outsourcing them to platforms built to monetize attention? The danger of ressentiment is that it replaces the creative with the reactive. It makes rebellion a product, and over time, it flattens what it means to be a human. The last human and the fear of depth. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche introduces the last human, a being who avoids risk, avoids pain, avoids greatness. The last human lives in comfort, trades meaning for safety, and scoffs at passion and vision. Look around. Are we not surrounded by signs of this decline? Not just in erotic platforms, but in how we live. We avoid silence. We avoid stillness. We fear being alone with ourselves. We'd rather scroll endlessly, consume endlessly, than confront the existential question that requires us to dig deep. OF in this context isn't the disease, it's a symptom, a mirror. It reflects a culture that prefers performance to presence, ease to effort, fleeting stimulation to sustained intimacy. Nietzsche does not mourn the rise of pleasure, he mourns the loss of depth, the refusal to strive, to struggle, to become more. Sublimation, the creative redirection of desire. Nietzsche didn't ask us to repress our instincts. He didn't advocate for asceticism. Instead, he believed in sublimation, the alchemical transformation of desire into higher forms of expression. Desire for Nietzsche was a source of vitality, but only when harnessed, only when redirected toward the creative. Erotic energy, in his view, is sacred, not because it's pure, but because it holds the potential to transform. What would it look like to sublimate our hunger for attention, our longing for affirmation? Could we turn this longing into poetry, philosophy, music, or real connection? Could we use our desires not to perform, but to build? In a sense, sublimation is about reclaiming authorship over our inner life, not outsourcing our desires to platforms or products, but wrestling with them until they yield insight, creativity, and power. The creator economy versus the creator of values. Today we often speak of creators, content creators, influencers, online entrepreneurs, but Nietzsche had a different understanding of the creator. Not someone who merely produces, but someone who creates values. The creator for Nietzsche is a rare figure, someone who does not inherit meaning, but forges it, someone who dares to ask and answer what is worth living for. This raises an uncomfortable question: are we creating or just performing? There's nothing inherently wrong with monetizing one's image or expression, but Nietzsche's warning would be this: be vigilant. Don't let the market define your worth. Don't let algorithms become your mirror. Don't confuse being watched with being seen. The true creator doesn't chase the crowd. They lead it or leave it behind. A society of consumption or creation. We live in a culture where creation is increasingly guided by consumption, where the audience, their preferences, their ideas, their attention spans, shapes what is expressed. Nietzsche would see this as a kind of soft tyranny, a surrendering of the inner compass, a fragmentation of the soul. And so we must ask ourselves, are we making choices from the inside out or from the outside in? Do we still have an interior life strong enough to resist the pull of public approval? If desire is always shaped to please, to sell, to fit a mold, then what happens to the self behind the screen? Nietzsche's answer might be, it fades. The rise of OF cannot be separated from the world that gave birth to it, a world of economic precarity, where many feel they have few options, a world of technological immediacy, where attention is currency, a world of existential disconnection, where intimacy is simulated and longing is monetized. Nietzsche would understand this pain. He would not mock it, but he would also insist that pain, when denied or suppressed, becomes distortion, ressentiment. He would push us to face our suffering and use it to rise. Because for Nietzsche, the point is not to escape discomfort, it's to be transformed by it. He would ask, can we take our hunger and make it generative? Can we turn our despair into insight? Can we rise not by becoming more visible, but by becoming more real? We live in times of extremes. Extreme access, extreme visibility, extreme detachment. Nietzsche doesn't give us rules, he gives us challenges. The challenge to resist what is easy when it threatens to make us smaller. The challenge to find meaning, not in performance, but in creation. The challenge to reclaim our desires as something sacred, not sellable. We may not be able to change the world overnight, but we can begin with ourselves. Nietzsche's voice does not come from a place of judgment. It comes from the edge, calling us to become what we are. Until next time, keep questioning, keep reflecting, and stay curious.